Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this morning's episode, this early morning's episode. I wanted to speak about an idea that's been on my mind for a day or so. And I thought about nature, I thought about human nature, I thought about human preference of nature. And it dawned on me that we're not in a known system where we can be aware of all the variables as they happen. What that means is it seems like the incidents of our experience of this life harbor an inner pattern that more and more and more of it becomes familiar as we experience life. You know, it's like there was this scene I remember when I was a kid, very young, when I was in Vancouver. I think it was this show called Lassie or something. It was this kid with this dog, and the dog could communicate to the kid, but the dog wouldn't use words. And then the kid, and the dog would come to the kid and tell the kid, for example, just the dog would bark, and the kid would be like, "Oh my God, someone's in trouble," you know, like the person would comprehend. But it was just this situation that our eyes open and various forms of communication move on this planet. Communication, first of all, is not from an object, okay? Animals can communicate to people, you know. Uh, Even an object on its own can have a communication. That's the whole point of ownership. Ownership means that items and objects, they are communicating. You know, they are, it's kind of like strange. You know, we got over slavery as a species, but we enslave objects without even considering if they're conscious or not. What if my coffee cup has feelings, guys? Pretty much every day that I've come and sat to give these talks, I'm looking at the picture of the world and I'm comparing the known elements to the unknown elements. The unknown elements are always more exciting because we know nothing about them. That means if you were to figure something out in this moment, would you rather want it be something that you 100% didn't know anything about, or something you maybe, maybe you 70% knew something about, 70% didn't? The new has a value for our life, and it's a value that echoes. That means every experience is like a physical piano key, but the sound is not physical, and it's as if every action and activity. It's like the universe is playing the human being like a piano. Certain actions, certain decisions in certain moments echo, and they echo non-physically. And what does that mean? That means I often thought, what is karma? Is karma a room the person is in, and as long as they're in the room, they have karma? Or is karma something that it is so inert that there is no outer solution to it? Where certain schools of mysticism have thought that form. Back in the day, there wasn't technology, there wasn't much you could do. You pretty much just survived and wondered, you know? Now we have replaced our wonder with our own generation of a civilization. What does that mean? Imagine back in the day there was an animal in nature, okay? Let's say a gazelle. The gazelle sees the lion, knows something is off, knows why is the lion looking at it that much, and so the gazelle starts running. It was as if the lion emerging out of nowhere, or imagine being a gazelle and never seeing a lion. Being a gazelle and never seeing a lion. So that first moment, the gazelle is staring at the lion is staring at the gazelle stares at the lion, and it's like, what is this? What is this creature? And then the lion roars, and the gazelle's like, yeah, I should probably run. But the thing is that gazelle, it's like its imagination is limited to the new thing that its environment shows. Sometimes I look at this world and I wonder, was the human being designed to move itself, or was it designed to move? Just was it designed to just move? That means sometimes in nature you look at it, certain things make sense. Sometimes it doesn't. For example, if there was a sort of evolutionary wit going on in just the changes of the world, creatures would update their ways, right? But how is it that the human being managed to update itself at a pace unfathomable compared to other creatures? So it's kind of like the genetics gives the potential of the life experience, but as each experience is being had, there's the will too. There's the free will too. So you are your DNA plus you are like a known DNA plus an unknown free will equals wherever your attention goes. You know, there was this show. There was a character in it. I think it was this show called what was the name? It was a show called, I think, Lucifer or something on TV, on Netflix. And in this show, long story short, they took the narrative, they took a religious narrative and they shot a different angle of it, which was, when you think about it as a series, like it was a good series. But the thing was, it's pretty much showing archangels denying their own nature. And so in this show, there is a archangel. There is what do you call it? It's kind of like, okay. So I don't know how many people know about theology in this world, but theology in the oh man, I can't explain all of theology right now. Okay, pretty much Lucifer is the name of an archangel in the monotheistic context before the archangel fell. And when it fell, the name changed to something else. Okay? So this whole show is trying to show the psychology of the archangel that fell. But but I'm saying that in it there was a scene where the archangel, it was a fictional show. They had the brother of this archangel, Uriel or something, and Uriel and this archangel had this ability where it would press like a key on a piano finger. It would so what am I saying? It would press its finger on a piano key. It would set things into motion that their effect will would fulfill the cause. And sometimes when you look at nature, especially when you are an existential creature that at some point didn't exist and then at some point started existing and was born into this world, it's as if there are patterns set in motion. You know, that means it's like it's strange, but the karma of our ancestors is the house we're opening our eyes in. Anyways, the whole idea of that TV show and all that was that there was a sequence set into motion, and this sequence, regardless of what you would do, it would be a domino effect. And that domino effect would be as if something has been set into motion that is irreversible. All right, so we have someone in the chat section, two people listening in this early morning. Thanks, dear listeners, for not letting me walk alone in cyberspace. Honk says, how early do you wake up each day? Mushrooms did it. Mushrooms? Honk says that was a separate question and a hypothesis. No. Guys, I have I mean, just to say it simply, I smoke cigarettes. I smoke a lot of cigarettes. Which I shouldn't. I mean, it's obviously something, I don't know, something probably with my past or whatever. But and also the chemical component of it. But so anyways, Honk, let's get back to the first part of your question. Not first part. You said that was a separate. The fall equals a perception of a separate self and other. Yeah, there are some people who feel just the concept of duality is like the archetype of the devil. So they feel duality is like a dimension where separation is the nature of the dimension. So imagine you could be a really good person, but you could be in a bad neighborhood, and you could be in a bad neighborhood and kind of feel, how would I say it? Like you could be in a bad neighborhood and feel like an angel. You know? I mean, duality that's a good point. I think your point is Honk in the chat section. Guys, when I say Honk, that's the name of the person in the chat section I'm responding. Okay. To get back to the title. What can I say? I mean, everything in nature has design. I feel that before we even think of ourselves as human beings in a world of humanity, we should, in some sense, first look at things as design. That means Mr. Within doesn't care if you are a good person or a bad person, you're running towards archetypes of inefficiency or archetypes of efficiency. Just pay attention how life, especially when you wake up in the morning, you have access to conscious experience. All right? That means on some level you can think that human beings are doing so many different things, or you can feel that every living creature on this planet is getting access to conscious experience. And so if we were to study conscious experience, you open up the rhythms, and pretty much it's another way of saying that don't think this world is new or old. Right now, due to the psychology of the human being, here's the thing, existence is design, is shape and form. Existence is information. Okay? Now, existence is this pure design level of phenomenology. When I look at the existence of a tree in my yard, that tree isn't evil or good. That tree isn't right or wrong. It just is. So existence is a level of just consciously experiencing design. Now, we are a unique instrument. We're not just like a bird looking at, you know, look staring from a branch, or just like a butterfly in the air. We are responsible for how we interpret the design of our existence into an experience of a character and a story. If you're young listening to me right now, you see yourself more than your world. If you're old listening to me right now, you see more from the world than yourself. Because as we get older in this life, it's like the days are passing by. The sands of the hourglass that the gods held in their hands is falling, you know? There was this religious story I heard in my childhood. I just can't remember the names of the characters in it, but I remember what the story was. And it was a bunch of people who went into a cave, and they went into the sleep, and I think it was the I think it was Prophet Muhammad. I don't know. I don't know, guys, but there was this story that there were these, I don't know, significant people in a religious context running away from like some bad guys. They go into a cave. Then it's as if God gives this command or something that all, what do you call it? Spiders come and they cover the surface of the cave. Out of nowhere, a lot of spiders come, and they cover the whole of the cave as if the cave is has no one has gone enter it, so they don't look for the people who were in the cave. It was some story like this. I don't know where it was from. I just my ears kind of acknowledged it when I was young. In the story, these it's like a way where time is shifted. Like you see, there's I mean, depends on your mindset, but there's different ways of perceiving time travel. One way is that we, in some sense, it's only us here, and we got to build it. It's a build approach. Another way is if there is a divine mover. You see, guys, everything is movement, is it not? Right now, that squirrel is alive in front of me because it is moving. What is death? The lack of movement. Okay? So, in this life, I feel there's two dimensions that can move. And just to finish off that cave thing I was saying, imagine an hourglass of the simulation of human time being in the hand of this unknown agency, divine agency. Now, if this divine agency just flips around, imagine imagine right now in your hand, you're holding an hourglass vertically, okay? Between two of your fingers, a small hourglass. Now, if you suddenly made the hourglass, you spun it like into a horizontal line, the sands stop falling. You change it again, the sands reverse. You change it again, it stops, then it comes back. Do you know? I don't know how well people. I mean, how do I explain this? I'm just pretty much saying if you were a god and you had an hourglass in your hand, if you turned it, the time would move in reverse. The moment we give time a direction, time's going to be like, what if I want to go the other direction, man? What if I want to go reverse? It's like, when a person looks at their life, don't they feel like a chess game that has unfolded? When I look at my past, when I look at what memories I have, the memories I have accessible in the moment are kind of like my chess pieces. You see, on some level, we're not just a consumption animal. Okay, right now we're being. It's like civilization is looking at the human being, and it's like, all right, what can I do with the human being? And the human being, it's like it's being used for consumerism because the human being only hungers for the satisfaction of the self. Very few people care with the world for the world because they're temporary. That means some people feel they're temporary. They're like, why should I care? I'm here for a little while, you know. But that hearing the fact that you're temporary makes you feel like it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to breathe every moment, you know. Okay. Yes, honk. You got it exactly. So honk in the chat section. That's exactly the picture I was trying to paint. That if time was in your control, you could hold it in a way where you're timeless. We're not traveling through time now. We change and we use time to refer to the change. So time is literally the aftermath of something. It's an effect definition. Imagine all the definitions in the dictionary. Imagine instead of just saying noun or verb in the dictionary, they said if the word was a cause. What does that mean? That means is the word originating. For example, if you have the word energy in the dictionary, that word is going to be a cause word. Imagine, let's call it that. What does that mean? That means it's a word that is an origin point. Like when you think about this, guys, it's incredibly fascinating. We open our eyes as this unknown dweller in the world. Now, the world appears to us as a three-dimensional landscape in front of our eyes, but this three-dimensional landscape, like an echo, subjectively extends and stretches out. That means everything I look at is never just that thing, it's also the one looking at it. So I'm just trying to paint this picture that we have opened our eyes. All those people who are writing a diary, those at the end of the day or something. I mean, I've personally never done it, but I mean, these writings are kind of like my journals. You know, these talks are like my journals. So I would say, ah, this life, a mystery in front of our eyes, and also a mystery behind our eyes. And it honestly breaks my heart. It breaks my heart when I see 8 billion creatures on a sphere in the middle of nowhere, not realizing that the greatest thing they can do is to see what their greatness would look like while they're energetically able to express themselves. The only thing that I think it's worth regret at the end of ends of this physicality. You see, you're not just a physical object, by the way, you're a subject. And you got to realize, most people don't realize, you will have karma as long as you're a subject to yourself. As long as you think your language, you're literally putting on glasses that are making the stars dim. It's like the person looked at the stars. It's like, why? Why are they so dim? I can't see these stars. I can't see the beauty of their light. And then the guy's friend was like, yo, man, what are you doing? Take off your sunglasses. You're wearing sunglasses when you're looking at the stars, you know? It's like that's the ego. The ego is the ideological lens that all phenomenology filters itself through into an animate phenomenon. That means it's like the caveman used sticks and stones to make fire, and nowadays we are using objects and subjects to create reality. And it's this playful, massive Lego building revolution. It's like, how did I? It's hilarious. When I was young, like when I was 7, I would play with Lego, you know. When I became 27, I realized I'm the Lego for the logos, you know. You know, some people, they're spending their whole lifetime to figure out who they are. It took me like 20, not 20 years, but it took me like, yeah, I mean, I could say it took me like 20 years to realize I am not a thing. And that was the most relaxing moment of my life, where I realized whatever I consider myself as, its intensity, its density, it was. It began as a sort of cause and effect modality, because when you look at it from the scientific angle, this world is this endless cause and effect occurring. You know. By the way, guys, I noticed something in the chat section, uh, and I really don't know what to say about it. In like a bunch of my talks, I've kind of noticed it. I think I should probably give a talk. I'm gonna make a note of it here. Maybe I'll give it tonight. There's this talk that I want to speak about the sober state. Now, this sober state is very crucial because it's like literally the sentence is double, like a double-edged sword. And what that means is we shouldn't, if you make an object more important to you than the mind in the moment, you have not understood your mind. You're standing too inside it to see that you're under it. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Think of human beings. Let's say you. Here's the thing. This is what I want every human being on this earth to just consider for one moment. Let this be. Let's call it platform one. Okay. I use the pilot analogy, and I'm trying to make the species realize that they can pilot their neurons. Here's the thing. Imagine 8 billion uh, points of attention, beams of attention. Imagine 8 billion unique versions of the Earth. We have access to that right now. That's the point of life. You are living inside an alphabet of intelligence. You know, for me, the periodic table, it was as significant as, you know, a set of numbers. It was as significant as the alphabet. And what does that mean? That means if you realize, dear listener, that all complexity starts and begins from a simplicity, so truth can endlessly rise and fall. Truth is like a civilization. It rises and it falls. People feel they get close to it, suddenly people feel they're far from it. People feel they get close to it, people feel they're far from it, not realizing that there is no one truth for a multidimensional being, a concept unimaginable. So, incredible question. Arn in the chat section says, how about duality within a yin and yang? Let me tell you something, a secret about the yin yang symbol. Have you noticed it's all in one circle? Have you noticed that the Taoistic metaphysics is acknowledging all multidimensionality in a singularity that's unknown? So remember, the yin yang symbol could be as dual. I even called in some of my talks years later, I think maybe like 2 years ago, I said that in the yin yang symbol, imagine inside each of the circle, there's another yin yang symbol. And inside each of those circles, there's endless circles of yin yang. You know? So what does that mean? That means duality is the father of infinity, but singularity is the mother of duality. And the void is the spark. So on this planet, there's different levels of, I would say, mastery of mind. Some people have mastered their mind in, for example, the creative dimension. Some people have mastered their mind in the maintenance, let me say maintenance dimension, the abode of Vishnu. And let us say some people have mastered their mind in the abode of destruction. You know? That means the executioners in the French Revolution that would use the guillotine, they didn't care if they walked on a bug. And that was the thing. We are potentially numb to our greatness by constantly thinking that our greatness is a script we need to find ourselves in. You know, life animates into stories, but on a very empty level, it gives you access to raw information. What does that mean? That means imagine these three states. Here, I'll tell you this. Imagine, let me start with the ring of the absent heaven. So 0, 1, 2, infinity. Okay? Imagine these four symbols. This is easy enough, and I'm using mathematics, so it should be a universal language by now. So I'm going to explain that to you, Honk, in the chat section. You say it's another thing to master the self. Let me tell you, there's no mastering the self. The self is dynamic. The self is like a river. The fact that me and you are right now individuals is because life is happening at a slow enough pace that we can see it, you know? That we can my sound, the sound waves. Imagine if the sound waves were moving at the speed of light. You know, you wouldn't even hear anything. I would give the talk, but you wouldn't hear anything. You know? No, the mind is not an object to the self. So, Honk, I would disagree with you there. Let me attempt an explanation here of what I feel is this could be said to be Mr. Within's analysis of the multidimensionality of the world. Okay? So let's say there is the zero dimension. This is where wisdom is born, by the way. People don't realize this. There is two things. Here's the thing. Many people think failure is failure. Failure is like part 3 out of part 4. Okay? Or out of 5 parts or whatever. Or let me say it like this. This is the thing. After you fail, you come to emptiness. When you confront, when you stand your ground, when you fearlessly just go through what life has in store for you, you get acquainted with absence. That's why I call the system the ring of the absent heaven. And I call it a ring because it spirals endlessly. So in this life, just think of the possibilities. Let's say I'm trying to think like, I always think like this, where I'm thinking I don't have kids, but I was thinking in the future if I have a son and my son came to me and it's like, Dad, what is this world? I would be like, okay, son, let me attempt to gather all knowledge on the planet and then I can give you an answer. No, I would say this. I would say that instead of thinking you're an individual self, instead of thinking you're just an image that only you see and others can't, you know, that's what the inner realms appear as, our imagination. Realize that if you get comfortable, if you get acquainted with how the world, with how the dimensions of the world appear, you will be comfortable in the system. If the pilot has studied techniques on how to go through different elevations, the pilot knows what to do in that situation. So I'm telling you, there's four major elevations and four major states of mind. And this idea that there are other dimensions and we are just we is not enough, because right now the self is singular, the world is being studied to be multidimensional. But we will move on to a phase where the self will be as multidimensional and the world will be multidimensional. Then we will reach what I call this concept a hollow infinity. We would reach a hollow infinity. What does that mean? That means, imagine you're standing between two mirrors. When I was a kid, my my house in Iran, it had a closet that would open, and the doors of the closet were windows. Sorry, we're not windows. We're mirrors, and so the closet doors would open from the inside, allowing the two mirrors to be parallel to one another. And I would go stand between them, and that was the first time my mind got introduced to an idea of infinity before I even know what the word infinity meant. So I saw that that was a hollow, infinite feeling, moment. Okay, that optical illusion of all the reflections of yourself in the mirror, that is like an infinite hollowness. And so, what does that mean? That means infinity's edge is the inconceivable, and singularity's edge is the inconceivable as well. So, imagine you're a pilot and um, let's say, the way I kind of see these, the dialogue for these talks should go forth. It's like a group of pilots sitting and wondering how they're going to collectively pilot a civilization. I honestly feel we need to start piloting our civilization. Okay, guys. Interesting comment in the chat section. So Honk says you are misentangling the mind with the formless, stainless, immortal Atman. Okay, man. I mean, let's shield ourselves with poetry a bit later. Let me just say this, Honk. If the Atman is formless and stainless, how can someone stain it? How can someone entangle it? How could it be eluded? How could enlightenment never be here if it's always here? Do you see? That means it's like they ask the person, "Hey man, why aren't you getting enlightened?" He's like, "Because the world is, buddy. Because the the whole world is enlightened." So, Honk, here's the thing. I think you are identifying with behavioral divinity. That is why you want the unknown to not be touched. You see, everybody's trying to relate to the unknown. Some people attack it, some people defend it. Do you know? But sometimes the unknown moves your knowledge, and that is the most significant, I find, and the greatest experiential revelation. I'm just saying, here's the thing. Like, there's this whole denomination in Buddhism called, I don't know, it's like the Lotus Sutra that kind of considers Buddha before he passed away, before he consciously left his body. He was in some sort of hysteria, and he's like, I have made a mistake. And it's like, what was his mistake? He said everybody was enlightened from the beginning. Because there's two ways. It's like you first go trying to run to save the world, only to realize that you have no idea what the world is. You're trying to save your world based on what you know. So after some point, everybody has a certain range of access to phenomenology, and you just go forth and you just engage. This life, it's in the word. If we are calling ourselves life, that means before we needed, we had language, we were alive, we were moving. So if you can find a comfort within yourself as, believe it or not, this may sound a bit hilarious, but as moving emptiness, you will become an incredibly fearless person if you study emptiness. That means, did you know all fears have fears? Did you know that there's a huge chance that what you fear fears you? Uh, yeah, Hunk. I'm not talking about. I'm like. Uh, Here's the thing. I'm not Rishi Vyasa, even if I had his eyes. You know what I mean by that is like yogic terminology. I salute it. I salute every story that has been attempted by a communicator on this planet. I am just saying that beyond the language or before the language, there is experience. This is that stargate we have been looking for. How absence is the space for fulfillment. How if you in your outer realms live simply, if you become comfortable with absence, then you will suddenly experience a lot of singular moments. That means oh man, this is such an incredible, guys. This may be a bit egotistical, but I'm impressed with 0, 1 to infinity. Because once you're comfortable with space, you become comfortable moving in the space as a singular phenomena. Once you're comfortable being a singular phenomena, that singular phenomena can endlessly comfortably divide. It can become dual. Once you're comfortable with the dual, you in some sense become comfortable. You get access. When I say become comfortable with the dual, that means if you suddenly saw yourself from a unique angle and you saw you were actually oneself in 2 dimensions, you would be able to maintain that. Let me tell you something incredible, Hank, that before I finish this concept, I went to Rishikesh, India in 2000, before 2016, and I was there for a couple months. Very, if Carl Jung kind of saw how that trip came about, it would be a surprise. It would be something very unique. It came like some things in this life. If you don't go after it, it comes to you, and you'll suddenly get a totally new comprehension of nature. Anyways, so I go to Rishikesh, India, and it was this kind of yoga course or something. And I finished that, hatha yoga and all the various yoga, but I went there on a personal way where, like, there are moments of my life where my identity moves me, and my identity appears anytime the physical maintenance is required. But once the physicality is content, then the inner realms can move without the attention endlessly coming to the physical reality. That means the issue is not that we are not intelligent, that we have to become intelligent. The issue is we are extremely intelligent, we just don't know how to be it. And because we're obsessed with being something in the future, that means sometimes you gotta let life make some moves, not just you make endless moves. Sometimes you gotta let life happen, and that is this thing. So, anyways, I found myself in Rishikesh, India, and there was this a friend of mine. And, I became friends with him at the end. At the beginning, he seemed to have like some issue. But anyways, I saw what I felt was one of a human being that had lived well, that had lived well. Anyways, I asked him. I was in Canada though when I asked him after those two months there in India where he was pretty much the yoga instructor in the ashram. Guys, it was like as more like I don't know, self discovery kind of journey for me, you know. But intuitive wise, it was like that's I got some of the greatest teachings on my intuition in India, you know. But anyways, I asked Wimal, and I'm like, hey man, because Vimal evidently in India went to this school where there was this enlightened guy, and everybody in the town would send their children there to practice and learn yoga, and it was just a very disciplined, kind of pure-hearted yoga school. And so Vimal had stayed there for 12 years, and there were so many people there that I could see what they were doing, you know. I asked Vimal, what is that truth? Simple question. And I asked them guys, like I don't know if people know, but I sometimes I can ask really good questions. And I remember asking them all, I was like, in this life, like what have you seen something different out of the basic reality beyond your senses? And I asked him if he sees that in nature. I asked him pretty much, how do you see nature? And he told me something incredible. And he told me it's not nature. It's not just just feeling oneness with nature. You know, every ideology known to man has to declare ownership of some phenomenology. Spirituality is not a concept. It never was. The Atman, the Parabrahman, God, soul, spirit, inspiration, these were never subjects or objects. These were a remembrance of what was here before the here and now was here to you. I'm going to read for you something I posted on my Instagram. Alright, guys, here's the quote. It's from Zulnan. Zulnan was asked, what is the end of the mystic? He answered, when he is as he was, where he was before he was. So anybody interested in enlightenment, this is the algorithm. I'm gonna paste this here in the chat section. This is the algorithm to mysticism. Those people who want to climb the mountain of mysticism, this is the algorithm. But I am not here trying to climb the mountain of mysticism. I'm here with these talks trying to build an advanced civilization. You know. So that is very important, guys. The end of the soul's journey is when the soul is as the soul was, where the soul was before the soul was. That means to make it short, imagine you don't have time, it would be wonder where you were before the soul was. Not everything. If you think you are an idea, yes, I agree with you, Honk. Guys, Honk in the chat section says, the awareness of I is the center, all else comes from there. If you think you're a thought, you have no choice. You're the center of the gravity of your attention is your identity. It's the I thought. I say, so, not everybody has an iPhone, but everybody has an I thought. The secret of good living is to realize how your mind was open before it was closed. That's it. That is the solution to suffering. There's literally nothing you can do. Physicality, the body's not designed to be immortal. The body's not designed to be immortal. So what does that mean? That means it's not just a physical purpose of consideration. The physical purpose is, yes, come and exist as your human form, be the most updated version of the human being. It's like a privilege, it's a luxury, it's an opportunity, it's an advantage. And then after that, we must it's fascinating. I feel that it's like consciousness was me taking steps towards form, and the unconscious is me taking steps towards the formless. And the formless, once it surpasses an ideological relationship, it's unknown experience moving known existence. That unknown is the first challenge before extraterrestrial contact. That our species has to realize the strangeness of its own identification beyond just objects and subjects, but a collective mind. We're like bees, and we're like bees who haven't made the hive yet. Or the hive that we've made is like civilization 1.0. It has to get upgraded. And the issue is because we don't have that much knowledge on design. This world needs designers. Guys, I was thinking, how do I explain the feeling? And the feeling is really, you are kind of seated in your experience of existence, and you simply wonder what else is possible. And you forget the voices of others because you could never hear them. What does that mean? That means I could sit somewhere and someone could come and talk to me. I would hear their words, but I would never hear how they used the words, what they were seeing in their inner realms as they were speaking. Interesting. So, guys, Honk in the chat section is he's sharing something interesting. He says in grammar an intransitive verb does not allow a direct object. This is a distinctive. This is distinctive. A distinctive from a transitive verb, which takes one or more objects. Okay. Sorry, guys. There was something I had to handle. Anyways, so all right. Let me just finish reading that. This is distinctive from a transitive verb which takes one or more objects. The verb property is called transitivity. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's kind of obvious to some degree, but thanks for sharing that. I mean, you're right because there is a multiplicity in how far you want the relationship to go. There was a time I was really thinking that the moment you have the first duality, you have endless, you have infinity after that. So it's like us wondering about the relationship of the object with the subject, and an object with two subjects than an object with infinite subjects. So it's kind of like, okay, here, maybe this is a good way of I can relate it to what I was saying. So first of all, Honk, thanks for sharing that. I think that statement where it says the verb property is no. It says an intransitive verb does not allow a direct object. The verb doesn't allow the object. Guys, language is definitely an interesting kind of subject. I mean, I've kind of dedicated my whole work towards seeing how advanced the technology language can be, really. Here's the basic way. This is the way I explain it. I say in front of your eyes, with your biological eyes, okay? Nothing spiritual, just in front of your eyes, you see things as objects. Now, if I asked you, if you closed your eyes, who would you be to yourself? You would be a subject, okay? So there is an objective realm, and then there is a subjective realm. And I use the word realm because I like that sense of that medieval sense of the realm. Do you know what I mean? I like it. It's like, you know, the const. It's like the. Anyways, so the objective realm and the subjective realm. Now, if we apply the ring of the absent heaven to it, it would be as if you look at your body, it can go to zero, it can go to a zero valuation. You can look at in front of your eyes, you see phenomenology. You could think all of this is emptiness, free will is an illusion. You can think as if all of this is one singular thing, as if the religious mindset perceives it as it's all God's will, we're all God in motion, you know, in individual motion, you know. So that's the seeing it from the zero dimension, the one dimension. Then we go to the two dimension, and you can see it's like in nature there is male and female. There is a sort of unique duality at work. So you see the duality in nature, and then you also see the infinity. And we saw infinity through our realization that the edge of the universe is not perceivable. That's it. We realized we can't see that far. And that was the birth of infinity. Because who knows? Who knows the how infinite this world is, you know? Let me tell you something incredible. Guys, Kujam in the chat section asks a question. He says, does nothing come from something or something from nothing? Or does something only come from something and nothing from nothing? Or is there really no distinction? I'll tell you my view. I mean, of course, you're asking one of the deepest questions in philosophy, but I'll tell you my answer. I feel you can't comprehend nothing if there isn't something first. So I feel nothing can't be conscious. So nothing actually is born from something. That means I'm telling you nothing to a two-dimensional being is not nothing to is something for a three-dimensional being. Our minds are like flashlights of where the light beams of it are how we have subjectified reality, how we have turned everything into a subject self. If you guys wanna, if you guys want, okay, let me try to give you a better answer, Kuja. Let's say first we had the number one, then we had the number zero, then we had the number infinity, then we had the number two, then we had the number one, then we had the number two. Yeah, one, zero, infinity, two. What does that mean? That means before we were aware that there's nothing, there was something, but after we as something became a we, it's like we were something, and then how do I say it, guys? It's like it's the endless chain of existence. It's an endless spiral. Time is spiraling multidimensionally. But in our time, in our dimension, it feels straight line, but it's spiraling in multiple dimensions. That means there are literally parallel uh, modes of being with different alignments and experience of time. Time is like the light in the room. It depends on the light bulb. So that would mean right now, I mean, Kujam asked a very important question because that is literally the big, the, what's the residue. That is that question you asked Kujam about something and nothing and their sequence. That is the purified debate between the theist and the atheist. The theist is like something was here. The atheist is saying nothing was here. You see? And so here's the thing. If our level of how we are something is based on how we define that thing, so if we define nothing, we would still feel like nothing. You know what it is? It's like you are a three-dimensional witness of a two-dimensional sense of chaos and order simultaneously. Chaos of being and non-being, as Honk says. Right, so Honk, you are a person right now, which I think you have to acknowledge this. You have reached the language threshold. When you reach the language threshold, you rest afterwards. There's no pursuit. You rest and the world moves and then you move. That means it's like you can't appreciate a sunrise at night. If suddenly the sun rose, suddenly imagine the moon became a sun. The moon decided to rebel against the sun. The moon was like, what is this? I'm going to have my own light. And the moon became a sun, imagine. That would be a moment where we would have to kind of move the moon. Can you imagine? Like so many people, they move furniture, from their old house to their new house. Imagine one day we're like, oh, damn it, the moon's decided to become a sun. Now we gotta move this, like, moon becoming sun. Here's the thing. Jonathan Swift says vision is the art of seeing that which is invisible to others. And so Mr. Within is saying the one who is seeing is that which is invisible to all the senses of others. There's a part of your mind right now, there's a presence to your energetic being that no human being has ever seen. And there's a presence to your energetic being that your own personality hasn't seen. When you get acquainted with that presence, it's kind of how in yoga they would say the yogi would go and find his divine, his or the yogini would find the divine remembrance. And this divine remembrance is beyond the human framework of linear analysis of the world. So if we want to be advanced communicators, you know what it is? Nature is like life forms peeking their head out of the dirt of an unconscious movement. Consciousness is a result of something that wanted to slow down to be something. Because the whole thing about how enlightenment can become escapism, or spirituality can become escapism, the spiritual trap, I say, this in philosophy is because it makes you feel you are at your destination when there is so much of the road left to keep going. Any ideology that makes you feel like you don't need to pilot your moment is an ideology that is either you have overworked and you need to rest, or you in some sense haven't seen the greater war. Like imagine right now as human beings like sleep in their beds, at night gracefully beyond the atmosphere. Imagine there's a galactic war going on. Imagine Star Wars, Star Trek level stuff. You know, you would be like, you would be a kid looking at the stars and you'd be like, it's so empty, it's so silent, but in the atmosphere there's like people dying, interstellar battles and whatnot. And you'd be like, look at this simple night, this gentleness of the world, look at this
happiness and oneness, but in the atmosphere there's interstellar warfare, warships being destroyed. You know? And so that's what I'm saying. There's always deeper dimensions to life, and I feel our inner realms are our hands on the steering wheel of the elemental forces of nature, and it's an opportunity. And so this sequence component to it is as if, honestly, guys, I didn't plant that tree in the yard, you know? But that tree exists, and that tree is a program of intelligence, you know? It's going in accordance to a program. That means I think when extraterrestrials look at us, they just see the movement of geometry. I think we are geometrical movement to higher beings. A lot of things on this planet are not rational movements. And even if they were to become perceived as rationalized movements, their rationality, it's as if they have a mind of their own. You know, it's as if a squirrel on a branch, it is true on some level, my inner realms, like light is going through my eyes and I'm processing this whole moment as my life. So I feel like the moment is my mind. But I also notice the squirrel on the tree has a mind of its own. So it's as if there are things in my experience of the moment that before I move, they're moving. That's the thing I wanted to make the audience aware of about nature's mysterious sequences, because these activities are like they are patterns, right? And I feel we don't just fall in love with people, we fall in love with the patterns that minds express themselves, and it's all pattern recognition, and it depends on the choice and experience of the person. What does that mean? That means if you ask yourself who you are right now, you'll notice your next step. Guys, a helicopter is like flying right over the place I'm staying. Guys, my flight is here. I gotta go. You know, my ride is here. Guys, let me poetically say what the meaning of life is. The meaning of life is kind of like you get a hot cup of coffee and you get to drink half of it, and then throughout time the hot coffee becomes cold. And then if you want hot coffee, you suffer, but if you suddenly see cold coffee is good, then it's as if like cold coffee has its value. Life is not just about attaining things of value, it is also being able to wonder how you're seeing the value in it in the first place. You know, the films that touch our souls usually are films that the character goes through a transformation that no human being has ever seen something like that. It just fascinates them, you know? Guys, I think the helicopter ride forgot where I was, you know. What can be said about the unknown's eyes? What is the value of you as a human being acknowledging the unknown? Personally, in my life, all these sequences in nature that is phenomenology, they are all held in the unknown. Language is like a playful domain. It is not per se a technology that must be used with too much seriousness, because the moment language is taken too seriously, it deviates from outer reality and the person gets caught in their inner realm. So for me, it's like if you can master poetically master. When I say poetically, that means hear these words, entertain these ideas. You know, just see what I'm talking about. These four states are: one, find an ability in this life to get comfortable with space and absence. Just, I don't know how, look at life, you know, just, I don't know, get rid of something and notice that things can leave. A lot of phenomena comes and goes. It's like our mind is like a camera, and the cameraman is unknown, but the eyes of the cameraman are the camera. Okay? And life and phenomenology and the elemental reality is moving in front of this camera, hence the word Maya in the Vedic tradition. And karma is based on how much the camera moves in accordance to what's moving in front of it. That means the karma of the cameraman is based on the directions to either follow the actor or not follow the actor. There was this Japanese kind of comic book series where the the people in that world of the comic book, the main character was born on a planet where all the members of the planet, it was a warrior species. What does that mean? It was an advanced warrior species. That means a warrior species that had access to advanced technology, but the nature of the types of uh, beings on this planet were that of, they were not. It's as if their nature. It's like, and let me tell you, it's like a war. I feel our species is not per se a warrior species. We are a designer species. I feel we were the just like Neo from the Matrix was the chosen one. We are the chosen animal species that sees more than the rest. We see through the matrix of manifestation more clearly than all the other animals. Isn't it fascinating? Like, imagine we opened our eyes. Imagine right now we opened our eyes and the descendants of all animals in humanized form was around. That means, like, imagine like we are like chimp, half unknown descendant in evolutionary biology. But in reality, imagine it was like half lion, half unknown descendant. So what does that mean? Imagine you saw people go to with lion faces, lion-like faces. You know, kind of imagine Skyrim in the subway. So I'm just saying that imagine we opened our eyes and there was like we were like defined by our chimphood. We were building our chimp nation. Lions were building hybridized lions, humanized lions were building their lion nation, and it was as if every species was as advanced as us. Wouldn't it be a much more fascinating world that imagine like it wasn't just us as an animal that evolved? So I am open. I'm that one of those guys in history who's open in attempting to make animals, connecting advanced technology to animals to make them as conscious as we are. In the future, maybe like 500 years from now, though, not now. But in the future, I am open to that idea because I feel that it's all about expression. And the reason why the human being expresses is because it knows that it is the purest feedback. You are your own purest feedback. And when you learn to study your mind, you get a sense of how the battlefield is, and you're in the trenches and you're wondering, all right, what now?
And then you realize that what now, whether you were in whatever situation, the only solution is to go forth. And what I've realized is in complex situations, I attend I my it's as if the inner child within me comes to give an answer. But in situations that are externally very simple, that inner child doesn't exist. And what I mean by the inner child is that you are an accumulation of various angles of yourself throughout this life. And sometimes an emotion is like it's like patterns colliding. That means when I evoke emotion, sometimes I can, sometimes it naturally happens. But if I wanted to, like right now, how I'm kind of speaking, if I wanted to just go into an emotion, if I had to, like, let's say Shakespeare asked me to perform. Shakespeare came back with a time machine. It's like, Mr. Within, you gotta act, man. You know, I'd be like, Shakespeare, how'd you get here? I would kind of realize that I wouldn't act. Let me tell you why. Because people have lost what theater meant. You know, a lot of words in the English language come from Latin, but a lot of people have forgotten how people would perceive life. They have forgotten the spirit of rhetoric. You know, there has been an ignorance towards the logos, an ignorance to the pathos, and an ignorance towards the ethos. What does that mean? That means there's been an ignorance to the world body, the world mind, and the world soul. And when there's an ignorance to these, it doesn't matter how much of a great stage you're given, the eyes of the world is limited. That means you cannot, if somebody was saying, because guys, I don't know how many people know this, but I've kind of studied film production, and for me, human psychology was the fascinating thing. So, kind of the reason I decided that was that I was like, okay, I'm observing all this psychology, and I don't want to be like a psychologist, like as how can you say names? It's like, here's the thing: whatever you see the furthest in, you usually are very successful in it. And success is a concept that it seems to be a picture you put on the wall, but it is actually a rhythmic abidance as the moment. That means, imagine there is a judgment upon the person, and there's a judgment from their own nature, from their own universal nature. There is a judgment upon their character, and there's a judgment on what kind of world the character sees. That means sometimes I feel karma is just life tapping you on the shoulder, being like, buddy, like, are you going the right direction? That's it. You know, it's a need for an inner reapproach.
Guys, um, there's something I want to share that Honk said in the chat section. Words are the great grandchildren of silence. That's deep, man. That means our silence is the grandfather of the future generations. So, guys, I guess I've kind of shared my view. I feel like I want to share something about maybe that it's not just processing of the senses, it's processing the outline where the senses are poured in. So the sense of self of the person, the identity, is like a container. The subjective realm is containing the subjective meaning of the objective realm. Now, the subjective meaning, it's like somebody said, it's like, hey man, did you know back in the day there were no objects? It's like, hey man, did you know back in the day there were no subjects? I feel that on some level, energy's expression is a performance to itself. Every word we speak, we hear. Every sky has an inner depth. I feel that the only thing left for our species is that immediately becoming conscious of the self, which I feel that phase has been done. Many people are conscious that they are an individual. That's enough. That's like the basic necessity. Your own navigation of your own individualism. Guys, silence is neither a noun or a verb, but it is where verbs and nouns come from.
So, guys, Tuev in the chat section says our current language is very limiting. That's true. I mean, every technology has its limit. You can't explain. You could kind of look at your telephone, your cell phone, and realize, all right, this is a teleportation technology for images and sounds. But you see, you can't expect your phone to become a teleportation device for your whole physicality. You know, that means technically human beings have mastered subjective teleportation, but we haven't mastered objective teleportation. You know, silence is like space, and language and words and terminology which hold form are the form in the space. So Sri Ramana Maharshi is pretty much telling you that silence is your true nature. Meditation is your true nature, and that true nature is silence. And Sri Ramana Maharshi in his work, he has shared this idea that the ego, this identity, this whole sense of self that seems to be suffering, it is like a stick used to handle all the other sticks in the fire, and then at the end you throw that stick into the fire, and it's as if the soul witnesses all that it has done while it is while it is occurring. Sri Ramana Maharshi, the way I've comprehended his teaching, I had his book and I would read it on the subway. You know, he Sri Ramana Maharshi. Sri Ramana Maharshi, he says that just remain silent. His method is don't chase the butterfly. Sit still in your true nature. Be an actual human being with an honor of your own DNA, which is a novel exploration. Nobody knows how tomorrow happens. People know what is happening when they're conscious. And so how much faith? Like it's like I am very surprised that many materialists in this world have a faith. They have a faith in before they sleep that they're going to be up tomorrow, you know. But empirically, in deep sleep, there's no evidence of existence. So technically, this is what I call the linguistic simulation. That every subject we have has a value of how the subject classifies the moment, you know. And so when you realize that every objective classification, every subjective classification, everything you've seen, and it's led to just seeing the object. Everything you've seen, which has led to seeing the subject. Guys, silence is that zero dimension. When you get comfortable with it, you also become comfortable with speech. Whenever you go to any environment, become comfortable with the simplest components of that environment, and then you'll ultimately be comfortable with handling any complexity. You see, that means you have to befriend the spirit of the art form. Any artists listening out there to my talk, I don't know how people usually, I mean, it's an inspiration from the inner realms, of course. You know, it's as if like Michelangelo, he saw the angel in the stone and he set it free. His inner realm saw a way reality could be, and he went towards achieving that. Okay, setting it free means he trusted life, he trusted the inner vision, and a chunk of stone had become an angel. Michelangelo was an Italian sculptor, by the way. It's like the ultimate question: how can you enlighten or advance yourself without advancing the world that self is getting its definition from? I feel that it's all the stories we've been told. Imagine a civilization where the children are born and their parents are like, be quick, be quick, be quick, and the child's being hurried from the beginning of its life. Now, this child is going to realize that it's being pushed into speed. Now imagine that child suddenly goes into society and suddenly sees society is functioning at a different speed. I'm just saying that if we just kind of perhaps potentially, if we thought we were incredibly able and advanced and high speed and hyper attentive beings, I'm not saying it's like believe it until you see it. But I'm saying like it's honestly like you have the strength, use it. That's life. You see, it's endless potentials and endless outcomes of those potentials. It's just that we can pilot our choice. So, anyways, guys, I'm gonna end the talk here. you know, the eyes of the unknown are the greatest exploration of knowledge. I'm going to open it up to Q&A. If anybody has a question, wants to get into some conversation or debate on this, treat the chat section as if the School of Athens 2.0. It's pretty much. You can even see it as a philosophical gladiator. All right, let's give the Q&A maybe. Okay, out of curiosity, does anybody even have questions in the chat section before I start Q&A? There's like 7 viewers now. So 7 people somewhere in the world, have found this live stream. Okay, 8 viewers. So anyways, all right, guys, Q&A. It's open. Let's give it 15 minutes. Let's give it 10 minutes plus.
No, no, no. Here, let me. Okay, so interesting. So, guys, P Turtle has actually asked a great question, where I think certain people may could argue it's the best question. It's kind of asking how to ask a question. Why should a question exist? So here's the thing. It's kind of like I was talking about design earlier, P Turtle. So I'm okay. Let me read your whole question. How does one ask questions and expect an answer when no one really knows? Okay, this still doesn't mean you shouldn't ask the question. Just because we feel it's beyond the language threshold, or literally just because we can't go inside a black hole, that's not stopping quantum. That's not stopping theoretical physicists from writing theories on what's happening in the black hole. You know, astrophysicists still consider, even though they can't see that far, but they theorize it and then validate the theorization based on how much of it actually relates to the objective realm. So I would say, how does one ask questions and expect an answer? Think of it this way: divide it first. Let's say, how does one ask a question, and then how does one comprehend the answer to the question? And you say, is it because we're lazy and just want someone to tell us instead of finding it on our own? That is always a component. No time ever in history has there been free will and individuals in a civilization, and at the same time, it's like I'm just saying, it's like this idea that if technology is doing everything for us, then what are we supposed to do? What are to evolve naturally? You know. So I would say a question usually compares a world to another world. So it's an addition of a world. So the best question to ask is it's like, even before asking the question, ask a question to see if you see something for example, something that you see. Do I see the same or not? And then that becomes like a stable kind of ground to then build the next question. You know, I'm telling you, when you realize everything is design, then the question becomes what design is being currently seen and where the design should go. And the question even can be added the dimension of time. That means you can wonder about the unknown past, the unknown future, or the unknown now. These are all wondrous, uh, various ways the question can ask. But I feel the best question is when you actually don't have the question and the question comes to you. So if you actually don't have a question right now, it doesn't mean you should ask. You know, if you have a question, if there's something actually a question means you have seen your inner realm and you want to know what else from the inner realms of how else have others seen the same thing. Like, that's kind of like the question, I would say. Ask a question only when you have one. You'll know when you have a question, you know. I think everybody nowadays knows, like, when a question comes. For example, a question comes when you reach an unknown moment. What's inside a black hole? There we go. We came to a black hole, you know. What if, Honk, you realized the archangels is an idea of the supremacy of how the will became multidimensional? I mean, guys, that's an incredible theological question. Why was there that many angels? Why couldn't one angel do all the work? Why was there a spectrum? You know, it's as if like the angels, the archangels, and it's like all a multidimensional existence is simultaneously being, all the color spectrum is being the same light beam. You know. So, guys, this is technically still Q&A if, if anybody has a. Pretty much wonder about what's unknown. And usually the best questions come from a confrontation, seeing the unknown, a moment with the unknown. Guys, here's a good question I'm going to ask the audience, the viewers. What would a future look like that had nothing to do with the past? What would a future. Honk, guys in the chat section, Honk says a devotee came and touched Ramana Maharshi's feet and he said, why? And Ramana Maharshi said, why touch my feet? Find your own self in the heart and touch those feet. I was thinking Ramana Maharshi's like, yo man, why is this guy touching my feet? No, I mean Indian tradition. There's a purity of a mystical kind of background to the nature, but guys, I think what Ramana Maharshi meant there is that you're looking for an outer solution to an inner problem. The inner problem is not trying to move an object around to fix it. The inner problem has to change from the inner realm. And the best approach is to become aware of what is the moment and what is an addition to the moment due to the conscious activity. Guys, I'll say this one last thing. Whoever has truly experienced beyond the language threshold, you you realize words are a part of the equation, but not the whole equation. So you don't get this sort of desire to have the language of the inner realms be 100% the outer realms. You know, Rene Descartes went so far to consider that the outer realms and the inner realms had nothing to do with one another. So he felt like I am kind of I'm speaking about it differently than Rene Descartes because I'm saying that we have access to both. So technically means we're in neither one, or we are in the relationship of both of them. You know, there's different angles we can kind of go for. Guys, language is clothing. When will the world realize we are dressed in ideal wear? Oh, are you asking me, P Turtle? Are you asking Mr. Within that question? Oh. Then people, I guess, have no questions. Yeah. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. I mean, it's not 10 minutes, it's just been maybe 4 minutes. All right, guys, I'm going to go out of cyberspace. Anybody has a question, I'll tune back in. Blessings. Okay, guys, so a question has come. P Turtle says, Mr. Within, what book are you currently reading? What was the last one you read, and what is the next one? Here's the thing, man. Um, I this may sound ridiculous, but I transcended poetically uh, my like I learned enough from language, and then there was something else that I perceived beyond that. So let me tell you how I would respond to your question. I I don't read books. I look for the design, the design, the architecture of ideology. I read books as in I don't like trust me I got a bookshelf but I don't read the book as if I read the book at before I own how can I say it I have questions emerge, and in my attempt to answer those questions a certain range of it takes me towards teachings, takes me towards literature, it's all language. Okay, every branch of what is knowable in this life
it has emerged through different words. So you got this is how okay here. This is how I will tell you. I scavenge. No. What's that? What am I saying? I it's not even a word. I think. This is. I mean, sure, maybe. Okay, guys, this is my view. I literally see us on a rock in the middle of nowhere. I realized my eyes opened at a certain time. I realized there were tons of people who their eyes were open before me, and a lot of people their eyes are open now, and there's endless people in the future who are going to come and their eyes are going to be open. So I started to wonder, how did the eyes of the human being look at it? That's when knowledge really became interesting for me. Not that it was like some book to put in a backpack and to use your mind as a backpack for a book. That is ridiculous. You know, it's like the mind is a canvas. You know, guys. I'm gonna let this truck pass and then I'll turn it back on. All right, guys. I don't know. This truck is out of curiosity. How loud is the noise of the truck? The truck. Okay, guys. You know, if this. Anyways, let's focus on the chat. What's being said. Here's the thing, guys. I don't feel emptiness is the ultimate resolution of human behavior. I know there's extinction. I know you can go behind your eyes and be the whole moment rather than identify with the content of your moment. But I'm saying that what really this world needs is rhythmic action. What rhythmic action means that it's the humanity of the experiencer that is has become a priority more than what do you call it? The identity. Okay, the identity. It's like when you realize you're not a thought, you will laugh at your desires. Guys, yeah, is it better now? Guys, don't worry. I've ordered kind of better setup. You know.
Right now, I'm kind of working with a computer that has like battle scars from war. Literally, like there's scars in the glass. But anyways, so Yusuf asks an interesting question, and guys, I would appreciate it that when whoever is listening to this, just write where in the world you're listening from. I think it'll be interesting for everybody to know. Yusuf says, "What is the inner voice?" The inner voice, if you were in ancient Greece, if you were around, ancient Greek philosophers, they would call it the logos. The logos, the inner voice, is how the whole universe is alive, and the whole soul of the universe is accessible to the human being as the movement of conscience. You know. Yes, P Turtle, I did. Guys, yes ad infinitum. That's my yes ad infinitum. Guys, you are not a thought. I will say this. I will roar this like the Lion King kid, Simba. So that inner voice, Yusuf, I would tell you is trust in your inner realms and how they would express in the outer realms. That means the moment you don't have a relationship with yourself as a thought, because guys, there's a void, there's an issue. A thought cannot think it's a thought. It makes no sense. The fact that we ever thought we were the thought meant that you're only something you can't observe. You know, guys, you're not a thought. You're not your thoughts. Your thoughts come and go. You are an attributeless witness as attention. Thought is an image. Thought is an movement that you're aware of. The awareness is not the thought. I'm saying the awareness is like a circle where the self is a circle inside it. No, 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 because that's the language. Why do you think I say the linguistic simulation? Why do you so being human says you're not a thought, but then you say think? Yes, because how else can we communicate? We just think we are our communication, and that is why the world has led to war. That is why discrimination is so easy. That is why the cruelty of our animal instincts have still kind of are in the sub background of our day-to-day lives. Why? Why is that there? Because we identify with the language. If you are okay, if you're a thought, put your thought in front of me. Just tell me the shape of your thought, and tell me is it not the case that every day we wake up and there is just awareness to self, and as the self moves, consciousness is projected into an individual conscious mode. You're not a thought. You're navigating through them. You're pilot. You're attention. You're a creature of attention before you're a creature of thought. I mean, here's a better argument. Being human, before I could use the word, even say the word thought, before you learned language, who were you? Were you a thought before the concept thought existed? Were you a thought before the concept thought existed? Tell me this. Were you a thought before thought existed? No. You were the eyes of nature before they uh, reshaped themselves to themselves. No, it's language is a technology. It's like telling Tony Stark the Iron Man suit leads to war. I mean, sure, but it also does a bunch of other things. You know, so language is an advanced technology. You shouldn't wield it unless the world has evoked the strength for you to hold it in your hand. So that's interesting, guys. I just noticed a lot of people think there are thoughts out there, you know. But let me tell you, the thought is void. There is something more. You're not the thought, guys. You're not a thought. That's why you have different thoughts. It's like I'm a thought, but every day I'm a different thought. The inner realms are evocational. You are re-evoked every day from whatever conscious checkpoint of memory you had the other day. You know. All right, guys. Some people in the chat section are becoming biblical. Kujam says Jesus only scribbled in the dirt because some crazy folks may get the idea to write a book and create religions and twist good words for bad ways for those who lord over the words in dirt. Kujam, that is pretty intense, man. You know, it's see, that's the thing. That tells me that you haven't seen beyond the language threshold, Kujam. That means you still think the language of your moment is you. Where is the thought? Where is the thought? If you are a thought, where are you located? Where is the thought? Touch yourself as a thought if you are a thought. You know? Touch yourself as a thought. Touch your thought right now. Touch your thought with your hands. You see why you're not a thought? Because you have them. You know, just because I have a phone, it doesn't mean I'm a phone. Okay? Thought is a technology. It's how we evoke it, which is how conscious we are of experiential movement from a sort of existentialist, how conscious we are from an experiential stillness of how existential movement arises. You know? Guys, before language existed, ask the question before language. What was life before language? It wasn't something you could say. It was an experiential whole moment occurrence. So guys, is there any more questions? Alright, there's no questions. So let me see. Let me see if I was to ask a question. If I was, let's say, if I'm trying to think if my future self came with a time machine and would ask me a question, what would it be about this talk? Nature's mysterious sequence of activity. So I would wonder about the multidimensionality of all those terms. I would wonder, all right, so is nature's mystery comprehensible, or is it too vast and too multidimensional? Then I would wonder, could the dimensions communicate with one another? Would there be sequences, so that could the sequence of how I live in life be setting into motion other ways that I'm alive? You know? P. Turtle, how well you misunderstand me. Yusuf says, I think we were telepathic beings before language. That could be the case. So anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. These live streams are an opportunity for me to kind of see how life in cyberspace is occurring. I'm going to share a story, though, before I end off. And this is a Zen story where this imperial swordsman, back in the day, the swordsman who would teach even all the swordsmen in the army of the king, of the emperor, he comes home one day and he sees his wife and his servant are in his bedroom. And in that moment, he just instantly, he sees his wife, and it's like this Japanese kind of old story context. And so the imperial swordsman, he's even dressed in his armor, he comes home and he sees the servant and the wife,
And from the servant's viewpoint, if we could just put a pause there, or let me say it like this: the Imperial Swordsman comes inside, he sees the misconduct, he separates immediately his wife from the misconduct. So he commands the guy, he doesn't get angry, he doesn't become savage, he says, "Step outside," to the servant. The servant steps outside, and the wife is kind of like, she gave into, you know, uh, her desire and whatnot. So the servant is scared, and he's kind of told to come outside. And the Imperial Swordsman has these two, let's say, katanas or samurai swords, and he throws one of them on the ground, and he just says, "Fight." Now I want you to just pause the story as if it was a film, and I want to tell you the story from the angle of the servant. The servant was this, let's say, kid in his mid-20s, and the servant, okay, here's the story. The servant is just this humble guy. The servant is actually a student of this guru, this sage, this notable sage. And after that, he comes and works, and he goes to the monastery and whatnot. He goes to nature and kind of learns like from the kind of mystical school, and then he kind of comes and he's a servant of this imperial household. Now, the imperial swordsman was so away from the family that it was kind of like as if the wife was in a cruel way left alone at home, you know. And so there was the servant was there coincidentally, and it was a situation where um, the servant and the wife were caught in the deep. So what happens is that in that, now let's bring it to where I paused it. Let's restore it now. I'm just telling you the servant. It wasn't kind of like the servant's fault, but the imperial swordsman's too strict and closed-minded to see that because he feels like he's been dishonored. So let's continue the story. The servant sees the sword that just the samurai imperial swordsman threw in front of him. And before he picks up the sword, he says, "I have this guru," and he says the name of the guru, and it's like this very important, notable person. He says, "I have to go speak to him, and tomorrow I will come." And so there was this context of honor, that it was like to lose your honor was to like lose your soul in society, you know? So in the story, the kid's not running away. But the guy, the Imperial Swordsman, says, "Okay, tomorrow." Something like this. Now the kid runs to the guru's in nature, you know? And he comes to the guru and he says to the sage or whatever, he says, um, "Teacher, this is the situation. What do I do?" And he's expecting the teacher to say, "All right, sit by this tree and meditate till the end of time." Like he's expecting something like that, escape. The guru opens his eyes, the sage. He looks at the servant and he says, "It is your destiny. You have to go through this. You have to do this." And the sage gives him one word of advice. And he says, "Fight as if it's your last moment in existence. Fight as if you will no longer exist after this." And the next day, the kid goes back. The next day, the samurai, the imperial swordsman, in the same spot in the square, and he throws the sword, and there's even townspeople watching. And the moment the servant comes in and the imperial swordsman sees this, the servant just grabs the sword and is in this savage frenzy, literally as if he's gotten this feeling as if he might die any moment. So he's going full out, max out intensity, and he starts fighting. And this battle occurs, and this imperial swordsman's like, "Holy shit! This servant was this level of a warrior living in my house," you know. and he starts kind of fighting, and the Imperial Swordsman sees in the eyes of the servant this fear, as if this unfathomable fear came to devour him, and the servant in his mind is trying to live till the last moment. And so the Imperial Swordsman sees in his eyes this servant doesn't want to die even though he's made a mistake. And there is 1 second his grip becomes loose and the servant's savage frenzy hits the sword out of the hand of the Imperial Swordsman, and there's this silence where everybody in the battlefield's like, holy shit. You know, imagine, let's say, to make the story even more next level, let's say there was a hidden prince who had come to be one of the humble that also was watching that in the town. In that moment, the Imperial Swordsman looks at the servant and he realizes, and he just nods, and the man has restored his honor. And the story is the servant goes, and 3 days later he attains nirvana. He understands the nature of reality. No longer only through objects, subjects, design, shapes, numbers, alphabet, whatever way, like the elements of the periodic table, whatever way this world has been named, made to be realized, it is on an empty page. And once we confront emptiness, then our inner realms begin living their true lives on this earth. I hope this talk has served you. Much blessings and namaste.